You were mentioning before, I just wanted to go back to this quickly, about the decriminalization of drugs on our West Coast as well in British Columbia. It's basically a failed experiment. You have your tent cities there. You have drugs and violence everywhere, not to mention the influx of migrants, both the US and Canada. I always wondered how Portugal did it, because Portugal decriminalized possession of drugs, and they kind of were able to put their efforts into treatment. And they were, as far as my understanding goes, I don't know how different the culture is, but they were able to kind of reduce the crime around drugs. And I don't know why they were such a success story. And when we do it over here, it's an absolute failure. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I can go to Portugal and what is it, Amsterdam, where a lot of drugs are also legal, but they put a lot of money into treatment plans and stuff like that, and make awareness of it. I think they also, I know Amsterdam, you buy it in specialized stores. It's not like the street drugs that are both our nations just decided we're free to flow. Fentanyl is a chemical, is a chemical weapon, in my opinion. It's been deployed to hurt our population, because not only does it get them high, it alters their brain chemistry and shrinks their brain. So taking them more to their base instincts. So you see a lot of them hoarding and stuff like that. I think that's the difference, is when they decriminalized, they actually made it to where there was a system in place to where it couldn't be something unpure like that. I'm sure there was still street stuff, but I'm sure they cracked down, because like Portugal, a little bit more militaristic of a police force down there. And I'm sure that they cracked down on stuff, but probably just by keeping it affordable and pure. I know I've seen pictures from Canada where they have the white generic boxes that have come out recently, and I'm actually pro legalizing everything, but it needs to be managed. You can't allow people, because people as a whole are dumb, in my opinion. If they're not taking the time to educate themselves, they're just going with the trend, and those trends can catch them up. I was there in my life too, so I've been sober off of most drugs for about 20 years now. So, but I partied a lot in my youth, and the only thing I still do is I smoke a little bit of weed, because I have chronic knee pain, and it's the only thing that helps, because I will not take prescription painkillers and be a slave to the big pharmaceutical complexes. So,
yeah, man.
Get that stuff. So
you're reminding me, this is going to be a bit of a story, but it'll make sense in a second what the relation is.
Oh, no worries.
So I used to work at a gym there in near Toronto, just north of Toronto, in North York. And there was a personal trainer there so I used to do combat sports and stuff. And there was a personal trainer there that he had worked as a personal trainer at another gym with me. It was an MMA gym, Extreme Couture in Etobicoke in Toronto. And he kept bugging me. He's like, he wanted to spar. Let's spar. And I just kept pushing it off. I never wanted to do it with him, because he was a bit of a clown. But he kept bugging me. And one time he corners me. He says, "Hey, let's spar." I said, "Okay, well, I got to do this class and do this workout, and maybe after." He's like, yeah. I'm like, "But I don't have like my glide to bring any gear." He's like, "Oh, well, we'll just go light. I'm like, okay. You've been hounding me for months. I'm like, "Okay, sure, no problem. We'll go light." So I regretted it immediately, but I finished what I had to do. I go to spar this guy, just light. So he starts hitting me hard, and we're bare knuckles and stuff. And I'm like, "Hey, dude, you said light." He's like, yeah, light. So I peppered him a little bit, and he's like, "Hey, man, what are you doing? We're supposed to go light." I was like, "All right." So he grabs onto me, gets me in a clinch, and he starts to try and take me down, and he's terrible at it. But I'm like, you know what? This will be good practice for me. He's a lot bigger than I am. I'll let him get on top of me, and I'll work from my back. So I just kind of go limp and let him take me down, and he fucking slammed me. And it was hardwood floor, like one of those yoga studios with the mirrors, kind of like the cardio room or whatever. And all it hurt, and that caused a whole bunch of issues. So I ended up going to the hospital there because of what I thought was a broken rib. I'm like, "Can I just go get an X-ray to see what damage is done?" And I did have a cracked rib, but they also noticed I had some enlarged internal organs. So like, "Yo, your liver's this and that." And I'm like, "Oh," so they wanted to do some more tests. And then I had to go for the old endoscopy and colonoscopy. By the way, they used a different scope for each one, just so anyone's curious. And so they did the colonoscopy and whatnot. And they gave me a diagnosis there of inflammatory bowel disease. So the doctor there was trying to push me onto all sorts of what they call glucocorticosteroids. But and to the tune of like $360 a month or something like that. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. And anyways, I went back to the medical file and looked through the notes, and I noticed that one of the drugs they put me on when I was under was actually fentanyl, and that really surprised me that they did that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been used in surgery and stuff for a long time. I've actually been with someone who the fentanyl, they had to revive them on the surgical table. I was kind of hanging out for a friend, and they flatlined on the table because of the fentanyl. So and they had to bring him back. Crazy stuff, that's what it was originally designed for, was to be stronger than morphine. So it was cheaper too, because they don't have to grow it in Afghanistan and things like that. That's why we let the fields go.
Now, isn't besides like heart disease, isn't like medical malpractice or doctors basically the number 2 killer of people? Like, I mean, I can research that. Let me just check here.
It's up there. So I think like it's accidents are like number 1, like home accidents. I thought here at least they were for a while. And then the other thing was medical malpractice, I think, is number 2. So I should have popped this chat out too.
Okay, just asking here, how many people die in America and Canada each year from medical malpractice? Making it the 3rd leading cause after heart disease and cancer. And if we want to talk about that magical medicine time, heart disease and cancer can also be chalked up probably to medical malpractice. You can connect those dots. In Canada, the latest figures show that about 150 deaths occur each year due to misadventures or adverse events during medical care. However, other estimates suggest the number could be much higher, around 28,000 deaths a year. How do you go from 150 deaths to 28,000? But so between us, we have about 300,000 deaths a year due to medical malpractice. So that's a problem.
Well, and I just watched the other day, I showed it to my viewers, the Harvard medical students put out a rap video. And one of the lines is the girl is, I just skimmed the reading, still passed the test. So these are the people going to be your doctors, medical doctors and stuff, are just doing enough to pass. So it's not like if you've ever seen the show House, it's not all House MD. I've been through, I've had a lot of medical problems here myself throughout the years. I have a chronic nerve pain that just inflames every nerve in like my whole body, like it's on fire, electrocuted and frozen at the same time. I've got diverticulitis. I've lived a hard life. I beat myself up, and I've been at one point on 3 times the amount of SSRIs that they would give a normal depression patient for the nerve pain, because they didn't tell me what they were giving me. They just said, this will help. And it literally shut me down to where I was just like, no emotions, anything. My friends actually had talked me into weaning myself off these pills. And I ended up managing a lot of that nerve pain with diet and some natural medication, some natural herbal supplements from Asia. Sometimes it gets a bad rap. It's called kratom, though. It's just an herbal powder. Take a couple grams a day, and that pain's just not there. So,
awesome! I've heard about that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it gets a really bad rap because it actually helps people with addiction problems, because it can simulate the feel of the body of getting like that opiate hit without the super opiate high. I mean, there's different versions of it too. Like there's a red one that makes you all sleepy and tired, and a green one that gives you like a body euphoria where you're just like, woo, I feel good. And then I use a white powder because it's an energy with a little bit of pain relief, so it kills those nerves fires really good. And but yeah, I've quit lots of stuff where they've tried to put me on the system. Like managing a lot of my symptoms with diet and exercise helps so much more than being a walking zombie. So
yeah, hey, let's talk about that, because I think that's great. And